Welcome to Shorts Program 8. We have amazing filmmakers joining us today in this short program. We have sci-fi, animation. So thank you so much again for joining us. So right now we're going to ask the filmmakers if they can introduce themselves and give a short description of their project. Jacqueline?
Sure.
Okay, sure.
Hey guys, my name is Jacqueline Elise Rosenthal, and I'm the writer and director of Backlog. This film is a very important film to us. Basically, it's we're trying to combat and end the rape kit backlog. It's a true story, and it's told from the perspective of the key witness in the 2010 Senate hearing to end the backlog. And you really follow her journey from when she was on a college campus, pretty much enjoying her life, to a night that she unfortunately has to kind of remember forever. And her silencing by the authorities for 3 years. They refused to test her rape kit. And it's been 17 years and her rape kit still has not been tested. It's a big problem in the US, and there's not a lot of awareness about it. So almost 1 million, probably more kits untested in the US today. The number's not even quantifiable at this point. So this film was we're really grateful to be here. Thank you so much for including our film in your festival, because it's really important for us to get the word out as much as we can.
Oh, you're welcome. Gayatri? Let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Almost, very close.
Close.
I'm Gayatri Bajpai, and I'm
Welcome.
the director of Yatra: The Journey, which is a fantasy film about an Indian immigrant widow going through a fantastical journey. It's kind of Alice in Wonderland, but for a middle-aged lady, set in the world of Indian mythology, loosely inspired by the Ramayana. And she's on a journey to find 2 young boys that she's very close to, that she tutors when they go missing.
Thank you. So my next question is, what led you to write about this film or jump on board for this project?
Gayatri, do you want to take it first?
Sure. So I've worked with the writer slash creator Vijaya Kumari on another film called Halwa. And through working with her on a project before that as well, I just really came to enjoy our collaboration and telling stories about older Indian immigrant women that you don't traditionally see. So our previous project was about a woman escaping an abusive marriage and sort of finding love again at an older age. And this project, which took a much more genre turn, was something I've never seen before. When she pitched the idea to me and showed me the script she'd come up with, which she eventually completed with a very talented young co-writer, David Barbeski, I thought it was just such a unique tale. You don't usually see fantasy films about, older Indian women. And there was something really interesting about the metaphor involved in the film. She long story short, she gets stuck in a freezer at her dead-end job at a catering company. And she ends up finding herself in the world of the Ramayana, where she faces a couple demons, literal and metaphorical, and meets the god Hanuman, who she used to be a devout follower of, but has lost faith in. So I thought this was just a really cool way to explore this widow who's at a standstill in her life, finding kind of renewed life, a reason to live, and faith in herself by rediscovering her faith in this god. He's the monkey god in Hinduism, Hanuman.
And how familiar are you with the story?
The story of Hanuman, or I grew up here and there learning a little bit. I grew up in India. I'm half Indian, so of course I grew up learning a little bit about him as a deity. And he's the lord of a couple of things, including courage and of wind. So I thought both of those were interesting metaphors. She kind of gets blown by the wind into this world, and she needs to find her courage. She's gotten to a very meek, kind of beaten down place in her life. And actually, it's Vijaya's inspiration, which is that she grew up in South India, in Kerala, I believe, reading stories from the Ramayana, just a page every night with her family. So there was a lot of meaning there for her and childhood associations. And now she's a grandmother to two young boys, and she spent their childhood reading the same stories to them. So, I'm not like a devout, very religious person, but I've always grown up with that in the background, and it definitely informed all of our childhoods. And I thought was just quite a beautiful inspiration for, widows in very traditional Indian culture. Everything's changing, of course, and it's different depending on where you are. But widows are usually relegated to the background. They take kind of a retiring position in society back in the day. So thought it was cool to explore something completely different for this woman. She's kind of starting afresh, and Hanuman, her bond with Hanuman is almost personal in the story. I thought that was a very cool way in.
And what about you, Jacqueline?
Yeah, so this was a film I never intended to make. Truthfully, I made this film. It was a grad student film at USC. I give my mentors a lot of credit, Brenda Goodman and James Coyne, because they really, encouraged me to keep going, because it was tricky making this film. It was very personal, obviously. Most people who make films about assault have experienced assault themselves, and I struggled with how much I was comfortable talking about that. And really, this was like 11 years ago, and it's definitely not a huge part of my identity anymore. So do I want to reopen this? And then I just had to, because a couple girls at my school that I'm very close to were being assaulted, and kind of going through something that reminded me of what it felt like as a young girl. And it's really hard because you don't really have a lot of avenues of places to go when this happens to you. It really is the culture of sweeping this under the rug. And when you do speak up, it doesn't always end up in your favor. And a lot of people come at you asking you why you would make something up. And you don't find a lot of support, especially on a college campus. Usually perpetrators are very likable, charming men or women. This happens to men as well. And it's not a one size fits all. But it's standard that it's men on a college campus doing this. And when you go to Title IX, you have to find someone to testify for you, and the whole thing is just such a belabored process, and oftentimes it becomes a he said, she said. And I really realized that if I was going to have a platform to make a film about this, it really couldn't be about me and my insecurities and my worry about any of that. It had to be like, well, if I even just reach one person with this film who's going through this, and when we do go to the Q&As, it's really intense after. I mean, there's usually like 2, 3, 4, 5 people who come up and talk to me, and I want to make time for each of them. So I try to follow up as much as I can, but truthfully, it's a problem. And the film really focuses not only on what, like, it is a film about so Valerie Newman, the woman the film is based on, is one of the strongest people I know. And I reached out to her more than 3 years ago now, and I didn't hear back because I wanted to make this film at some point, and I just wanted to meet her because she was very strong. And I read her testimony, which is available online, and I just thought, wow, at 24 I would not have been able to have that kind of, or I think she might have been 25, I would not have been able to have that kind of courage and conviction to speak those words. And she did. And so I reached out to her on her blog, and she since has become a good friend of mine, and told me that blog was basically inactive because she didn't respond. And I thought, well, shoot, I really feel like it's important to tell this story, not just a story, but like her story, because she goes through all this and she's so strong, and then at the end you see that the bill didn't even pass, that it died in the committee. And that's like the harsh reality of what we go through in these situations, is like, she did make it there. She made it so far. And even then our justice system is the problem here. not the girls, it's not the schools, it's like the system. And so I don't know, like we really need to change that. And honestly, cinema has this power of reaching people, like it really does. And you know, I don't know. I think we just put one foot in front of the other to make this, and I ended up reaching out to her again, and that's how the film was made. Is I told her my personal experience, and I was able to find a connection to her, and she responded immediately, and gave me the permission to do this. And she's so trusting of me, and I'm very grateful because I feel like it's really, yeah, I mean, this film, we're turning it into a feature because it really, after seeing how much impact the short has had on people, it's insane. Like, I would say this film reaches survivors, but the people I didn't expect to reach is the perpetrators. Like a lot have come out to talk to me and ask me if what they've done is assault, and I have to let them know that it is, and they don't really go to parties anymore. And it's just kind of changed. Like that's my whole yes, I want to, by writing this film, my purpose was to, change the justice system and bring this back to the Senate. But truthfully, like the part that I didn't intend, maybe it's what's the word for pessimistic of me, but I didn't intend to be able to reach the perpetrators. And I think like I just showed this film at a film festival, and I was so impressed, and I'll just give them a shout out if that's okay. But Breck Film Fest, and the men at the Q&A in the audience were just incredible. And two of them raised their hand, and we're just talking, and they said, well, it seems like the problem here is also, you had to reach the people who are doing this in the first place. And the fact that the film kind of captures that, I think, makes me really happy, because yeah, I just would like to see this stop happening as much.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think that's really like the candid answer, is just putting one foot in front of the other. And also a big lesson in making this film was learning like not to try to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Like these things take time, and all it takes really is reaching one right person, and then it's the people they know. So that's kind of my hope for the festival circuit, is hopefully it can land on a senator's, computer somehow, or something like that. So if you know any New York senators, please let me know.
Of course, it's a very tough, and unfortunately that, these things happen all the time and they continue to happen. And thank you so much for, bringing this film to light, which is very important, because then it opens up discussions as well. And I'm really surprised that some of the men have contacted you and they were not sure, or they didn't think that they were doing something wrong.
I mean, it's really interesting because I promised them I wouldn't judge. Like when I screened this, the first thing I said is, if you want to talk to me, super transparency. And I also, been an interesting, very challenging ethical process, because I'm keeping a lot of people's confidence now who want to come to me and talk to me about, their personal experiences of people I went to school with, and I keep it to myself. But it consistently is, oh, two people, they had the same perpetrator, and I can't say anything, I can't do anything, because they're telling me in confidence. So it's a little tricky, because yeah, I would love to be able to help, and I'd love to be able to warn people about certain people who are doing this. But like that's the tricky thing, is you have to just be someone who listens, I think. And I really explained that to the guys, like, I'm here to listen, like I want to help. And almost every time their questions had to do with alcohol, and that tends to be like a very prevalent through line in these experiences. Not all of them, but I think it's like the lowering of inhibitions, or like the gaining of trust in a time where like it's an easy way to gain trust. And so I think that's the other problem, is like when alcohol is involved, it tends to, and that's what was the majority of the questions is, well, I really liked her, so I was giving her a lot to drink. Is that bad?
Mhm.
And that is a problem if your intention is to do that in order to lead somewhere. So yeah, I think, I hope that can, I mean, alcohol's not going anywhere. So we have to help people realize through, we have a scene in the film that I personally don't love to watch, but it's, taking you through the point of view experience while the assault is happening. And I did really, me and my team really debated, like, does this belong in this film? Because we also chose not to put a trigger warning at the beginning of the film. And like, I really didn't want to re-trigger assault survivors. And like, every time I watch it, I get a little triggered myself. So I thought, is this something that should be there? But truthfully, like, the fact that it's having an impact of, like, you don't get to choose to be assaulted, like, it happens to you. You don't really get a warning. I think that's why it's reached these people, because they're realizing the impact they're having on the rest of someone's life. And um, hopefully that can kind of be a reminder if they're about to do something again. But we're
Yeah.
just making films here and trying our best. And it's on your film too, sorry, Gayatri, did I say that right?
Gayatri, yeah.
Gayatri. Like, your film too, like, it sounds really impactful for, like, I'm sure when widow, like, anyone in the widow community watches this film, they feel very seen, like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
the sheer
sure.
representation makes a difference. Sorry, go ahead, Susie.
Oh, no, that's okay. Go ahead. You can finish.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that even representing something on screen, and however terrible, is very important because so many people identify with that and want to see it talked about. And I did get a chance to watch your film. I thought it was really powerful and beautiful. So thank you for doing that. It must have been hard with your own experience.
I can't wait to watch your film. I'm so sorry I haven't seen it yet, but immediately after this, I'll be watching it.
Gayatri, I wanted to ask you, how has your family, friends, and also your community received your sci-fi film?
Well, actually, we're about to screen this coming weekend at ISAF, which is a local festival, the South Asian Festival of Canada in Vancouver, near Vancouver. So I'm taking my mom to see it Sunday. This will be the first time she's seen the whole cut. And she's actually not Indian, I'm half, but she spent a long time in India. So it'll be very cool to hear her perspective. And then in the larger community, we've screened and won an award at the Mumbai Indian Cine Film
Oh,
Festival. So
congratulations.
that's very cool. Yeah, thank you. Sometimes, when you're representing mythology and religion, it's like, I hope I don't step on anyone's toes or their perception. But I feel like it has resonated with people, and I think everybody has their own relationship to their deities and their faith. In our film especially, I feel that the religious aspects or the inspiration took on kind of a very psychological meaning. Like, these are our main character's conceptions of her deity, her personal relationship with Hanuman, and then the Rakshasas and the demons of the netherworld are representations of kind of her own demons. So yeah, it's very personal, and I'm glad that that's still resonating with people.
Oh, of course. And was this your first sci-fi film?
It is actually, yep.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun to experiment with. We built a whole set for the surreal sequence where she goes from the freezer into this sort of in-between world. At one point, this was supposed to be an animation, and we had this idea that she would fully immerse herself in this fantasy world. And then bit by bit, Vijay and I started talking, and we thought it would be so much more impactful and actually, ironically, a bit cheaper to do a live action production.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a good animation can be crazy for the budget, which is why I really admire some of the shorts I saw in this block. But we decided to do this live action version. And so, we didn't want to create like a completely different fantasy world, but rather have the fantasy infiltrate her world. And so the demons and the god and everything turn up in these young boys home that she's been tutoring in. So once she enters that limbo, it's kind of a cross. It's like a portal or a hole was opened up into the Ramayan, and it's starting to invade her world. So we built this set for it, and we used special effects, a ton of makeup, a little bit of VFX. And that was definitely a first for me. Everything else I've done has been kind of in a very grounded drama or comedy world.
And how did you like tap into those different roles, like someone to do the effects and then the graphics?
Yeah, we worked with a really nice production company, Radius Pictures. Our producers, Matt and Brad, were fantastic. They pulled on people they knew from the TV world. We had a very skilled SFX artist who's worked on some really big productions. And we worked with Fonco Studios in Burbank near LA they basically built us an entire set. So those collaborations were really fun, just in advance of the film, really getting into those roles, talking inspo, imagery, going back and forth with my cinematographer, Alan Rickett, a really talented person. Just sharing, like visuals were so important. And then also finding the Rakshasas like body movement. I had a choreographer, Shivani Tucker, also extremely talented dancer. And we decided to take inspiration from like Indian classical dance. It's not a dance that they do, but we wanted kind of a rhythm and personality to each of these demons that she helped me build based on what their characters were. So it was a lot of fun. It's definitely, filmmaking is a team effort, but definitely like on an even bigger scale when you're trying to make something in this genre.
Yeah, and make it come to life.
Lucky. Yeah.
And Jacqueline, I want to ask you, being that this was based on a true story, how did you go about with the casting, and also the woman that this is based on? Did she have an input?
Yeah, so we actually put it up on Breakdown Express, and we got 6,000 submissions for the
That's
cast.
a lot.
It was a lot, yeah. So I wanted to do it on my own. I was hoping to save some money, and I was an actress for 23 years in LA. So, a lot of my friends are actors. So usually I have a lot of options for casting, but for this time around, I really wanted to be open-minded, and I was hoping to discover someone for the lead role. But yeah, I actually brought on a casting director. Her name is Cara Sullivan. And because I just couldn't do it all on my own. And the first person Cara recommended was Jill Renner, the actress who played in the film, in the student film. It's called Mallory. But she, yeah, it was actually almost a strike against Jill, because I'm a really big fan of I wanted to discover someone, and Jill's a big TV actress. And I really wanted to make sure, I wasn't biased. So that's the whole opposite point of bringing in a casting director. They recommend people to kind of come to the top. So, yeah, I ended up auditioning all the girls. I watched every self-tape. It's pretty intense. But I just felt this real connection to Jill, and she looks a lot like Valerie, like a lot. And just all these signs, it just felt meant to be.
And what about you, Gertrude? What was the process like, or were you involved in that with the casting?
Oh yeah, definitely. The lead was Vijaya, who wrote and executive produced the film. But then we held auditions, and we were sort of coming out of the pandemic at the time. Like things were just starting to taper and get a little better. And I was up here in Canada, so we did a lot of auditions by Zoom. So we had these like pairs of young boys, the brothers, just acting for us over Zoom and miming fear of the demons and whatnot. So that part of it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I think all, if not most or all of our auditions were over Zoom, and then we finally got to do some rehearsals in person. I'd worked with the actor who played Hanuman before on Halwa, very talented, Asit Vyas. So our leads were pretty much figured out. We actually ended up having a pretty big cast for a short film. And one of the most fun processes was rehearsals, especially with the choreographer, like working with each Rakshas or demon to figure out their movement and their approach to the character was a lot of fun.
And if you guys can just tell us, what do you guys look for when you're working with other team members, whether they're doing editing, producing, directing?
For me, it's passion. I really thoroughly want to make sure that the vision and the passion align. For this particular process, everyone interviewed, so I know a very clear idea. You know, you go to school with people for 3 years, so you have a very clear idea of their style. But I had, I think, 5 DPs that I interviewed, and we went through this kind of application process, I think kind of similar to how you would do out in the real world of really stylized. Okay, how would you, I kind of told them, I gave them the script and I said, just send me one scene, how you would envision. And the DP I ended up working with sent me back the entire film. So to me, that really spoke loud. I'm working on a project right now. It's sci-fi, actually. Before this film, I was mainly a sci-fi director. But the deciding factor for me has kind of changed a bit. And now it's, do me and this person have to share the same brain? And I think that's like a huge thing, because then, you know, when you're going back and forth in previs like we're doing right now, it's really amazing when they come forward with an idea and you say, oh wow, I couldn't agree more. Like most of our group chat is, I 100% agree. Like, how did you think of that? That was what I was thinking. And I think that kind of forms a synergy. When I work though, I notice the people I become closest to that become like my best friends are my actors, because I think there's this weird relationship between actor and director that's very intimate, because you're asking, I mean, it's such an interesting relationship. You're asking people, hey, well, especially in this film, as a drama, what's this thing that happened to you in your life that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? Can you tell me so that I can, you know, reference it on set or help you pull from it? And it's just so vulnerable, and such an interesting exchange. And it just, you know, when a production wraps, it doesn't go anywhere. It still stays there, which is really like kind of beautiful. But I would say that, yeah, for across the board, it really, you can kind of tell when someone's going to bring your project to the next level, because collaboration is supposed to be fun and like really a two-way thing. So you want to make sure that your team members feel that in return. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with all of that. And I think just a connection to the story as a storyteller from every member of the team and the cast, rather than kind of a more removed or kind of technical relationship to it, because some people do function more on that level and that can work well. But for me and what I'm trying to do, I want a DP who's thinking about the storytelling, not just the lighting as kind of this isolated factor, right? Somebody who has a connection to the core of the story and will also be willing to get adventurous or experiment where needed. It's always really cool when we are on the same page, like Jacqueline was saying, but they come up with something you wouldn't have thought of, and it's even better than what you had. So I like that process of, like, especially in prep, just kind of improving off of what the other person's coming up with, sharing references back and forth. And a lot of the film gets built at that stage. So you definitely don't do it in a bubble, and you want people, like you said, who have that passion to come up with their own ideas, and that's when it starts to concretely come together, even in my own head.
Thank you for that. I have a question that I'm always curious with filmmakers, if you guys could share how a new filmmaker or aspiring filmmaker could tap in to I guess different funding ways so that they can make their projects if they don't have any money or very little.
For this process, to make this film, I emailed 350 people individually. That's the only way the film was made. Some of those people randomly had connections because Bank of America helped with our film a little bit. And like I wouldn't have known that unless I emailed this person cold. Um, so I think just emailing you know, who you can even ask family members if they know people, and just trying to create like an Excel sheet for yourself. Um, that really makes a difference. Just like even if someone, don't email me, I have no money, but even
Yeah.
if someone reached out to me and if it was phrased a certain way, I still donate to the little crowd funds. Some people really swear by crowdfunding, totally a way to go. Personally, I feel like it stresses me out because I just don't like all that information being super public of, oh, I've raised this much. And I don't know, that really isn't my style. I'm more of a private person when it comes to finances. So that is an option. If you are like that too, and you're resistant of doing a crowdfund, or you don't want people to see like, oh, I only raised 50% of my budget, how embarrassing. That's how I feel about those things. So I try not to do them. But reaching out to people one-on-one is very personal, and people will get back to you. So I highly recommend that. Usually people filmmakers don't really go that avenue. I also just was at a festival and this girl mentioned that she went on LinkedIn and she started messaging people there. And one person donated, I guess, like 30,000 toward her film, which is, there you go. That's a
It's
budget,
amount.
Yeah. So there's so many alternative ways. I'd say just do what feels comfortable to you.
Yeah, I think, for very, very new filmmakers, I think a good idea is to work with what you have. I think at this point, it's a little bit of a film festival Q&A cliche, like use what you have, pick up your cell phone. But there's some truth to it, especially when you're really early in the process, because filmmaking, just like any other learning process, is iterative, right? And I think that applies to your craft as well as your network. So you might start out with hardly any connections, very fresh and new to the game. And the more you kind of build, upon what you've done, the more you have a little bit of experience behind you, and people are more willing to come in and donate. And you might know other filmmakers who are willing to donate their time and craft. I think I've gotten lucky in my community a lot, where because I worked on one thing, somebody else wants to collaborate on this other thing. And so that cuts out a lot of costs, because those people just like, working with you, or they like your storytelling style. But obviously we all started in a place of like, unless you're privately wealthy and lucky, you start in a place of scrounging a bit and just working with what you have. And that's a good place to start. I think a lot of new filmmakers should start with, there's not much of a risk here. I'm just, making something for a few $100s or nothing. And I'm not losing anybody money. I'm not worried about that. It's a nice place to start. And I think creativity can really flourish there. One of my films a few years ago, we made for very, very little in the, actress's home. And we didn't expect it to go anywhere. It was something we wrote kind of, just over a couple of weeks when we were inspired, my co-writer and I, and co-director and I, and it ended up going places, but we weren't focused on like, how do we bring in a big budget for this? We were focused on like, okay, we have a home we can shoot in, we know some people, filmmakers who are willing to help us out. And so we wrote within those limits.
That's great. And lastly, if you guys, if you can tell us any projects that you're currently working on. I know, Jacqueline, you did share that earlier, but you can tell us when to expect to look out for your film and how people can contact you, reach out and stay connected.
Yeah. Right now I have 5 films in development, which is probably why I'm sick. But 2 of them are shorts and 3 are features. But so 2 of the shorts are going into production for the end of this year.
Nice.
One is called Our Life After, and it's a drama. It's really beautiful, about trying to heal after shooting in a synagogue. And then another film is called Europa. Not really allowed to tell too much detail about it, but I'm looking forward to it. And I co-wrote one of them, and then I'm writing and directing the other one. But yeah, it's going to be, I think I can say this, it's a virtual production film, so it'll be nice to get my hands on that tech. And then Backlog is being turned into a feature, which is really exciting. And then I have another feature called Gaslight, which is about a woman who's gaslit by her husband during COVID, and stuck indoors with him. So yeah, just excited to see what this year looks like and to get some rest.
Sounds like you're staying busy.
Yeah. Oh, and you can contact me. I don't have a website. I haven't gotten my act together to do that yet, but I'm always on my Instagram. So it's Jacqueline.director. And I respond to people all the time. I love meeting other filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers.
Those projects sound awesome.
Yes.
I'm working with another writer / executive producer on a feature. I'm signed on to direct. It's an indie project that we'll hopefully be doing by early next year. So it's about a middle-aged Indian immigrant lady who leaves an abusive marriage and finds love with a bartender and starts her own business. So a drama with some comedy thrown in. And that's called Designed by Preeti. So look out for it sometime late next year. And then I'm finishing up post-production on a comedy, actually, about a young couple dealing with some issues, and they invite an urban shaman over to help them go through a process to deal with it, and it ends up backfiring on the relationship. So that one's, a bit of a turn from the whole sci-fi drama world. Really enjoyed that process, and we're wrapping up soon. And then I'm writing 2 features that I'm in development on. One of them is a coming of age project mixed with a little sort of gothic surrealism that takes place in Delhi in India. And the other one involves a very insular spiritual community in the Midwest. So yeah, those are very early stages, but yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I really appreciate you guys being here and learning more about yourselves. And we're really excited to see your projects, and we'll definitely stay in touch. Thank you again.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much for having
Susie.
us.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
Nice to meet you.
I forgot to put my social media up. So it's Gayatri Everett. Everett is Everett, and that's on Instagram.
And for anyone that's joining us, please go on our website on SparkFest. We still have some amazing films. Support the filmmakers as well.